What happened in episode 4 of House of the Dragon, King of the Narrow Sea? Let's break it down in nerdy detail. On this channel we cover House of the Dragon in full, breakdowns, explanations and deep dives into the lore and history of George R.R. Martin's world, as well as other great fantasy books and TV shows. If that sounds good, then please consider clicking the subscribe button in the bottom right of your screen and the bell icon. The episode opens with Rhaenyra sent on a tour to find a possible marriage match. Remember, last episode ended with Viserys promising that she could choose her own match, but it's clear that her heart is not in it, particularly given the old men and boys sent before her to woo her. We see old Lord Dondarrion and a young Blackwood. Both are storied houses. We'll see Beric Dondarrion in A Song of Ice and Fire, and the Blackwoods again later in this story. The young future Lord Samwell Blackwood gets into a fight with the Bracken, their ancient enemies. The Blackwoods may not win Rhaenyra's hand this time, but he does win that duel, the opposite of what happened in the book, incidentally, and the Blackwoods will marry a Targaryen in the not-too-distant future. Anyway, Rhaenyra is clearly bored of all this and sails home, only to be buzzed by Daemon on Caraxes. The court gathers. This is a show they desperately want to see. Daemon is the king's beloved brother, but he had been banished and gone for years. Now rumour has reached court that he has taken the title of king himself, King of the Stepstones. When Daemon arrives, he is wearing a crown, and it's clear that everyone is waiting for a confrontation. The Kingsguard assemble. Viserys stands formally by the Iron Throne with his crown and sword Blackfire. To everyone's surprise, Daemon kneels. There is only one true king. My crown and the stepstones are yours, he says. This clearly gets him back in favour with his brother, the king, but Rhaenyra, who has been wearing her Valyrian steel necklace all this time, a gift from Daemon, knows him better. Why has he returned? She confronts him with it, but he gives her answers she doesn't believe. He isn't here in King's Landing because he loves King's Landing, that much she knows. In return, he challenges her about her quest to find a husband. She doesn't really want to be tied down, he can tell. But for a short while, everyone is happy. Even Rhaenyra and Alicent seem to bond a bit, understanding more how they have each got to where they are now. But of course, Daemon was there for a reason. Getting love and respect from his brother is hugely important to him, and you can see how he feels when he rests his head on Viserys' shoulder, so there's that. But also, there's his connection to Rhaenyra, and he has a plan. He leaves her a map, showing her the secret passages out of the Red Keep. The fact that the Red Keep is riddled with secret passages is a plot point that comes up again and again in George R.R. Martin's stories. It will come up again a couple of times later in this story, and much later, Tyrion and Varys and Arya and others will all make use of them. For now, it's just worth noting that the Red Keep is not as secure as many of its inhabitants seem to think, and spies can watch you anywhere, which we see here, of course. So, of course, Rhaenyra's little trip to Flea Bottom was observed, and I suspect that Daemon will have known that. He wanted this to happen. Even leaving aside the uncle-niece thing, which is icky enough on its own, he is manipulating her and everyone recognises him in Flea Bottom, and he removes her hat so that everyone recognises her too. This isn't just about seducing her. He's putting on a show. So what does he want? Well, some of it is to show her the world outside her bubble of courtly life, what the small folk really think of her and the Targaryens, and it's not particularly flattering. Their wants are of no consequence, she declares. Worldly-wise Daemon corrects her. They are of great consequence if you want to rule them someday. Will she remember this lesson? Book readers will, I'm sure, have their own thoughts on that. Then he takes her to the brothel so that she can see things that she probably hasn't seen before, other than in the stylised tapestries in the Red Keep. They mentioned the tapestries earlier in the show, actually, and seriously, have a look in the background of some of the Red Keep scenes. The tapestries are really something. And Daemon seduces her before leaving her looking rather hot and bothered. There's a lot going on in this scene. He's clearly trying to make her want him, working her up then leaving, but also trying to teach her that she's a Targaryen. She doesn't have to play by anyone else's rules. She can take and do whatever she wants. He is married, after all, and look what he's doing and how little he cares. She doesn't have to think about marriage as just an end to independent life. She can still do what she wants. This will be important later. And all this is shown in contrast by the constant cutting back to the Red Keep and Alicent, who is being dutiful, doing what her father wants, doing what her husband wants, not complaining, but seemingly not enjoying it much either. Anyway, with Daemon gone, Rhaenyra heads back to the Red Keep, and still a bit horny, and with Daemon's wise words in her ear, she seduces Criston Cole. He seems reluctant at first, but then later really not reluctant. This is, it has to be said, quite a tough situation for him to be in. He has sworn an oath of celibacy and to protect the king's honour. Sleeping with Rhaenyra would be a death sentence if anyone found out. But can he really refuse her? Does he even want to? Well, in this instance, we see what he does. The twist here is that the spy who told Otto Hightower about Rhaenyra and Daemon was working for Mysaria, Daemon's former lover. But as well as passing on that information, she also looks after him, giving him a place to sleep after the night before. Theirs appears a complex relationship, and we'll have to see how it pans out through the season, but their initial passion seems to have cooled a bit by the trick he played in episode 2, and then him disappearing off to the Stepstones for 3 years. She is now very much a self-made woman in Fleabottom with a spy network of her own. The White Worm, they call her. And after he promised to keep her protected, she now says that she is protecting him. In the book, it is hinted that she works for him all the time, but here she seems more independent, and Daemon doesn't seem to mind. As I said, he was putting on a show. Otto, of course, leaps at the chance of passing on the news about Rhaenyra and Daemon to Viserys. It's 2 wins at once for him. It will probably get Daemon banished again and damage Rhaenyra and her claim to the throne in the king's eyes. He does overplay his hand a bit here, though. He says that the 2 of them were coupling, and Viserys basically accuses him of stirring the pot, trying to push his own interests. It seems Viserys isn't as unobservant as he sometimes seems. He knows how ambitious Otto is. Alicent overhears all this and confronts Rhaenyra. This is an important moment. The 2 of them had just started to grow a bit closer again, and now, well, Alicent seems to be doing a couple of things here. She does seem to be concerned about her friend and how it will look, and is letting her know what is being said about her to her father, but there is surely also an element of jealousy, that Rhaenyra can seemingly do whatever she wants, while Alicent very much can't. But the important thing is that she accuses Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra lies to her face. Not only that, but she does it on the memory of her mother, the same thing Viserys had done when promising to honour her place as heir. What if Alicent finds that Rhaenyra lied to her, and didn't even mention what happened with Criston Cole? Another deterioration in their relationship. But Viserys is obviously angry, of course he is, and confronts Daemon. This is when we see what Daemon seems to have been planning in all of this. No one else will want to marry Rhaenyra now, he says, so wed her to me. It's a brazen and a heartless suggestion, and Viserys treats it with contempt. Daemon came back and manipulated all of this, and he now demands to be rewarded for it. All this goes down a little bit differently in the book, but the theme of Daemon being manipulative and seemingly wanting power is the same, although here he adds another element to the mix. If he and Rhaenyra were married, they would restore House Targaryen to greatness. This is another slap in the face for Viserys, telling the King of the Seven Kingdoms that under his leadership, House Targaryen is not great. Throughout the show, Daemon has been set up as an arch-Valyrian, talking in High Valyrian, giving Valyrian steel gifts, invading lands like a Targaryen would, in contrast to Viserys, who doesn't even ride a dragon anymore, dithers over every decision and is surrounded more and more by the Westerosi establishment. But Viserys here is decisive. He banishes Daemon again, telling him he doesn't care where he goes this time. Ironically, this display of strong, decisive leadership and what Viserys does next is exactly the kind of thing that Daemon would want, a proactive, strong Targaryen leadership style. And he humbly submits to it with an "as you wish, brother." We've obviously not seen the last of Daemon, though. Having dealt with Daemon, Viserys now turns his attention to Rhaenyra. At the very end of the episode, we see that he has ordered that she be made some moon tea, the Westerosi way to ensure there are no unwanted pregnancies. So whatever denials she may give in public or to him, he clearly now thinks that she is sexually active. This is just another instance of one of the bigger themes in Fire and Blood, that women are routinely treated differently and unfairly in this society. It's such an ingrained part of the culture that no one even bats an eye. If she were a man, no one would have cared about her going to that brothel, sleeping with whoever she wants or being heir to the throne, and here her father is basically taking away her decision about whether and when to have a child, even the theoretical possibility of it. But despite pressure from Otto and others, Viserys is sticking by her as heir. Aegon's prophecy that the Targaryens must be ruling the Seven Kingdoms to save the realms of men is just too important. He shows her the dagger which has Valyrian writing on it, the exact wording of the prophecy, and an expansion of it to include the prince that was promised, the saviour of humanity from the Targaryen line. This is the prophecy which takes up so much time and plot later on in A Song of Ice and Fire. Could it be about Jon Snow, Daenerys? I've done plenty of videos on that in my Robert's Rebellion playlist if you're interested. But Viserys insists and goes back on his promise from last episode. She will marry Laenor Velaryon. Because absent from all this episode has been Corlys Velaryon. The Velaryons weren't just a support act in the Stepstones, they provided the bulk of the navy, army and funding, and are the richest and one of the most powerful families in the realm. Oh, and they have dragon riders too. Corlys seems to still be angry about the repeated snubs to his family and is now looking at a possible alliance with Braavos rather than the Iron Throne. This would be a huge threat, so Viserys has to bring them back into the family. The best way to do that is for Rhaenyra to marry Laenor, Corlys' son. Rhaenyra has no real option but to agree, but insists on Otto Hightower being sacked. He was clearly spying on her, and even Viserys now sees that he is pursuing his own family's agenda rather than just what is best for the realm. A lot happened in this episode, and things have shifted. Otto is sacked. The Velaryons are now about to be brought back into favour through marriage. Rhaenyra's position is weakened, but she remains heir. What will happen with her and Criston Cole we will have to wait and see, but it's clear she is now much more willing to just go and get what she wants, rather than just sit around the Red Keep being quietly angry. And all this was sparked by Daemon's brief return. He may not have got exactly what he wanted right then, but compared to the start of the episode, he's probably quite pleased with how it went, and crucially his connection to Rhaenyra is now even stronger. One to watch. But what did you think about this episode? Let me know in the comments below.